Shalom, Bethel family. It's time for our weekly review of the Torah discussion from this past Shabbat. This past Shabbat, we read Parshat Reeh, and it was also Rosh Chodesh Elul, the beginning of the new month of Elul. Of course, that's the month that immediately precedes Rosh Hashanah. So we're in the 30-day countdown, or count up as it may be, to Rosh Hashanah. And I want to talk a little bit about the Parsha. The Parsha begins with this amazing quote, and if you printed out your sources from the weekly email, hopefully you did, because there's some pictures you need to be looking at as well. But you can see the Parsha begins with this question, this idea: "Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse." And it goes on to say, you'll receive the blessing if you do my mitzvot, and you won't, you'll get the curse if you ignore my mitzvot. And I find this to be a pretty troubling passage, right? Is it true that if you keep all the mitzvot, then God's going to only give you blessings? Life has very rarely, in my view, lived up to that idea. We don't do the mitzvot because it means God's going to smile on us and only good things will happen. We've all seen too many bad things happen to good people for us to believe that to be the case. So what does it mean, right? What do mitzvot have to do with receiving a blessing or a curse, or experiencing blessings and curses in life? Well, in shul this past Saturday, we did a little thought experiment to explain it. I asked everybody, and I'll ask you now, think of the Olympics that just passed in Rio, and think of 2 or 3 of the top headlines that you remember from the games. I asked folks to raise their hand. How many of you did not think of any headline that included Ryan Lochte? Nobody raised their hand. Everybody had thought of the Ryan Lochte story. I thought, it's so sad. There were so many amazing things that happened at these Olympics, and the headlines were dominated by the story about Ryan Lochte and his mates getting busted, and that whole crazy story. We don't even have to review it. But then I asked something else. I had put in the Shabbat booklet these 4 pictures. You can kind of see them here, but better if you download the sheet, you can see them yourself. And I asked, how many people can identify what's going on in these 4 images? Right? How many people recognize these stories from the Olympics? Because these are the stories from the Olympics, I think, that we should have been talking about. You have I'll try to do it this way. You have on the first picture, Chinese diver He Zi, who won a silver medal, and then immediately had a proposal from her fellow diver. And there was some debate over which medal was more valuable to her, but she did say yes. I have it on good authority. A beautiful story, a beautiful idea, a wonderful moment. People couldn't identify that one. Very few people could identify the next picture. South Korea's Lee Yoon-ju left, smiling as she takes a selfie with North Korea's Hang Eun-jung, 2 artistic gymnastics competitors from North and South Korea. If you've been following the news from those countries, then you know that tensions are high and relations are not particularly good right now. And yet, here's the Olympics, here's sport sort of overriding that. These 2 young women smiling and experience a moment of peace and what's more important. Most people of the 4 pictures could identify the next one. That's, of course, the U.S. 5,000-meter runner Abby D'Agostino. Right, she fell after colliding with the woman shaking her hand there, New Zealand's Nikki Hamlin. And the runners helped each other up, and they crossed the finish line together, and there's a beautiful embrace. And unfortunately, D'Agostino was not able to continue. She had done so much damage to her ankle, and yet, with the help of this fellow runner, was able to complete at least that heat. And it's just a beautiful story, again, about sportsmanship overcoming competitiveness, and what's really important when 2 human beings come together. And the last one nobody could identify, and I think it might be the most important one on the whole thing. One person finally got it. This woman swimming is Yusra Mardini. And she's one of 10 athletes that made up the Olympic refugee team, right? A group of athletes formerly from Syria, now refugees without a homeland. And here they are. They managed, it's an incredible story that you should look into of how they managed to get to Rio and how they managed to compete. Just amazing, amazing stories. Now, why is it that when we think about the Olympics, it's not those stories that we think of first? We think of this stupid story with Ryan Lochte and the swimmers that was such a distraction. And I think, it's easy to blame the media. Well, that's what the media told us. You know what? The media gives us what we want, right? The media gives us what we want. It is we who made that the story, not the newspapers, not the radio, not the television, right? Because the choice is ours. We can look at the world and we can look for the blessings or we can look for the curse, right? The blessings are those 4 pictures that we just looked at, but they're not interesting us. That's not what we are choosing to want to see. No, we choose the curse. We choose the people making fools of themselves. We choose the people throwing away a promising career. We choose the people who don't take seriously everything the Olympics is about. That's what we choose. We choose the curse. But it doesn't have to be that way. We could choose the blessing. We can. And it's not about the Olympics. It's not about the media or the news we consume. It's about how we see the world. Right? We have a choice. And what Judaism does is it tries to help us see the world the right way. And that brings us back to the beginning. That's why we are told you can have a blessing or you can have a curse, and if you do the mitzvot, you'll get the blessing. It's not that we get it as a reward. It's that what Jewish mitzvot are about, so many of them, is about showing us the blessings in the world and the beauty in the world when we would otherwise miss them. Right? That's why we say blessing before we put a piece of food in our mouth. Right? To recognize how amazing it is that we have food to eat. Right? That's why we mark sacred moments. Right? We had a bar mitzvah on Saturday. For any other kid, it's just a 13-year-old birthday. But we take it and we recognize the maturity, the ability to relate to the world in a different way by bringing that ritual, and we make that moment sacred. We make time sacred. With Shabbat and our holidays, we emphasize how valuable time is to us and how lucky we are to be able to share it and spend it together when we set it aside. When we don't do the mitzvot, it's so much easier to get caught up with those things that are unimportant but seem to be so consuming of our attention and our priorities. But Judaism says, no. Do these things and you'll see the beauty in the world. You'll see the blessings. It's not your reward. It's just a direct result of living a life connected to the world in this special Jewish way through mitzvot. Now, this parsha always lines up with the beginning of Elul. Not always Rosh Chodesh Elul, but with the beginning of Elul. And I think, as we go to do our reflection about the year past, as we prepare for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the process of tshuva and repentance, this is sending us a powerful message. It's saying, you know what, you're going to look at this past year, and maybe you didn't have the best year, but I bet there were blessings in it. Or you can look at this past year and you can see only the blessings. More importantly, we can look back at the year and see how were we a blessing or a curse to others, right? How did we help others concentrate on what is good in their life? How did we help become one of those good things? Or the opposite? How did we make people's lives harder? How did we obscure the view of the beauty and the Spirit of God in the world? It's Elul. Rosh Hashanah is coming. My favorite time of year, both for the self-reflective part, but also because we all come together again as a community to appreciate what is good about life. I hope as we do, we are all able to appreciate the blessings in the world and, as the Torah tells us, to use Judaism, use Jewish practice to bring that beauty out into the world, to bring that holiness out of the world, and to make sure that we can always see just how lucky we are to be who we are, to be where we are, and ultimately to be what we are, part of the Jewish people, people with the gift of Torah, and with wonderful techniques, wonderful ways to live life and to see all the beauty that is there for us. Wishing you lots of beauty in this month of Elul, and looking forward to sharing it with you. Shavua Tov.